Hey,
How are you?
uh, my phone is ringing in my ear. Let me. How you doing, Justin?
Good. Pleasure to meet you.
There we go.
There we go.
Jason, I thought you were a technology guy. What's going on over there?
I always forget to plug in my mic.
Gotcha.
I'll plug in my DAW. I'll plug in everything, but just the mic cord I forget.
Nice.
How you doing, man?
Good. Been busy, but that's always good.
I bet. That's cool. So, Justin. Okay, so Craig. Justin and I go way back.
Oh,
A couple years now, probably, right?
Yep. Probably two and a half, maybe three.
that is way back.
Something about there.
Yeah. Well, it is these days. Everything moves so
It is.
fast, right?
It does. It's lightning fast.
And Justin was working at an internet company that I guess he had us as an account, and he got me into internet leads. He taught me the ropes.
There you have it.
Short learning curve for him. He did just fine.
Usually, this is awesome because it worked out, and you're a good dude.
It's like crack though, Jason. Once you're on them, man, you can't live without them.
Right, and they're
He
expensive.
does talk about it nonstop.
Welcome to the Insurance Dudes, a podcast for insurance agency owners, helping us to think of different ways to optimize our business and our lives.
This week on the Insurance Dudes podcast, secrets you never knew about internet leads from inside one of the largest internet lead companies with Justin Marks.
So Justin, tell us your background with internet leads and.
Sure. So I landed on a digital marketing company, frankly, by chance. I'm originally from the East Coast and ventured out West Coast after graduating college, and frankly had no job and enjoyed the beach for a solid month and realized that there was, bills piling up and frankly needed to get a job. So landed myself downtown San Diego with one of the best places to work in San Diego at the time. And from there, I didn't really understand what they did first couple weeks, and slowly learned what a lead generation company is, what a digital marketing company is. And from there, just wiggled my way through the company and moved up and around, and eventually landed to working with folks like yourself.
That's awesome, man. And what would you do on a daily?
Daily basis, a lot of communication, outbound proactive communication was probably at the forefront of my day for most of it. Second part of my day was filled with looking at data, making sure that leads were flowing, making sure that partners had good application rate, had good close rates, and ultimately were on the path to scaling those businesses.
Awesome. Craig, I cut you off. What were you?
Keep going. Can't remember that far.
That's awesome.
No, that was
So
30 seconds ago.
your role there was more of talking to agents like myself. What advice? So going into this, I'm sure that there's a lot of agents out there that hate internet leads, right? Well,
Preconceived notion around web leads or phone calls is one of the biggest mystical creatures out there, right? Everyone's heard of it. They've heard the negative. They've maybe heard some positive. Frankly, it's okay to be scared. I think it's good to be cautiously optimistic for products like this because frankly, it's not a one size fits all solution. So you could have the best leads in the world and give them to two different agencies, and one agency is going to tell you have the worst product in the world. And the next person's going to have that fantastic producer who's going to work it like it's their only job that they have to do. And frankly, they're going to make a lot of money. So it's definitely a two-way relationship with lead generation companies and having a great relationship and really outlining the path to success. So I think preconceived notion on web leads is huge, right? And most people have been jaded, or they have been hearing the stories that, I had 100% disconnected numbers or whatever those made up features that the people talk about are. But frankly, it's really not a mythical creature. It's simple. If you have a team and you can put that team on a path to success with outbound dialing and reaching out on multiple channels and having a process that you can outline for those team, it's really not rocket science. Just getting people on the phone, engaging in real conversation, and understanding them on a personal level, and then ultimately helping them save money, right? That's kind of the goal of every insurance agency, is to A, give them better coverage, B, make them part of your family, and C, ultimately, yes, you do write their business and scale your business. So it's twofold. It's not bad at all.
That's awesome.
Creating, we talk about it all the time, creating, developing a process, and then executing on that process consistently, right? Yep. And what many people do is it's tough in the beginning, or they don't get results for 4 weeks. So these leads suck, I give up, right? And you can look at the numbers too. Obviously now we all have the phone systems that give us the visibility into the dials, and 3, 4, 5, they stop. And I think Jason, you said 20, right? We've talked about it multiple times.
Calls, yeah.
15 to 20 calls, and the vast majority don't get there. I think everybody you guys have probably seen it. It's like a one pager that says the data over the course of 100,000 dials, and it shows where the contact is. And I mean, this is off real data, right? And you're dealing in data, and it's data. It's like there's no, unless they don't qualify, right? But
I think it's important to really put yourself in the consumer's shoes, right? So when you go out and search for something, or when you get a phone call from a random person that frankly you don't know who it is or who's calling, your first inclination is to ignore that phone call. So if you put yourself in that consumer's shoes and you start to understand, wow, I wouldn't write like a million random calls, and probably might be a little irritated at first, and probably get a couple that first day if it's a lead that's been sold a couple times. But the person who's persistent, and the person who is not rude but just persistent, I guess just a great way to call that, often would get my business. So it's interesting to think about it from their perspective, because ultimately lead generation companies are trying to serve consumers, and you're trying to serve consumers as well, but everyone's perception just gets twisted or turned around sometimes when they take that for granted.
So here's another thing that I know about you, Justin, is that you have worked with some of the biggest insurance agents in the country, in the Allstate world and outside the Allstate world. So to give you a little bit of credibility to whoever, not a lot of people probably know your name, but hey, maybe they've worked with you before. But what kind of data? Because you analyze data. You're the data guy.
I am.
Tell us a little bit about what you do. Yeah.
So I think data is one of those, it's like a mystery feature. Like everyone has AI powered today, or everyone is data driven is one of those fun words that companies love to brand themselves as. So I think data is going to be a little bit different in terms of a conversation with every team and every focus. So I think the important thing about when you have a conversation about data is, outlining what are your goals, right? Our goals ultimately for an insurance agent are to bind business or write more policies, right? So if you break that up into the small bits or the small performance metric pieces that can help you outline the larger data picture, you end up with a couple simple, quick things. So if you're making phone calls, contact rate, right? If you can't contact them, the data is going to show that. I think as you go down that funnel and down that pipeline, you start to see, it starts with contact rate. From the contact rate of those consumers you've contacted, who or how many or how few are you quoting those consumers? And then ultimately you take the step down from there. Okay, from the quotes you provided, can I bind that business? Now, those are kind of like the 3 steps that I typically judge data on. So, contact rate, quote rate, and sales rate. But within those 3 massive ladder rungs, you have so many other small pieces. So if you break apart the quoted status, you can see quoted, not interested, right? Quoted, didn't qualify because of underwriting guidelines. Quoted, just doesn't have the economic means to do that right now. So you can really take each ladder rung and break it apart in a couple different ways. Same thing with contacted, right? Contacted, You have a conversation, right? That's pretty simple and clear. Contacted, hey, had a conversation, but please let's book an appointment for next Thursday at 5. So I think it's really interesting when people talk about data is they really need to go back to the basic simples. What are the goals? What are the things that I want to understand about that piece of information? And then frankly, how can you turn that around and use that to your advantage, right? So if you're thinking as a business owner and you're thinking of overhead, obviously the more people you can have your sales team contact, the less overhead is going to be wasted just dialing for dollars, right? So that's kind of the first piece is when you look at data in web leads or phone calls is that contact rate and judging what you want to be successful, right? Some agencies might say 1 in 10 contacts or dials might be successful. Other more finely tuned agencies might say 1 in 2 or 1 in 3. Just kind of how you view that business and how you set that goal and how you can analyze that goal.
That's awesome. And where are you seeing analytics? Craig was talking, we were talking about 15 to 20 dials. What are you seeing across the board?
Yeah, I would say every source can be a bit different. It's going to fluctuate for so many different reasons. For example, Easter was just around the corner, right? Naturally, with people I work with, we noticed that contact rate went down a little bit, right? Contact rate went down around tax day, which is a huge, big, either scary day for people or exciting day for people, right? You can do that in 2 different ways. So I think understanding, the seasonality, and that plays a huge part in it, but also where your company is getting leads, right? Are they sourcing leads from high intent places like Google, Yahoo, Bing? Are they all over the social networks like Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat is new for a lot of folks there doing the generating? Or do they run a display network, maybe on Yahoo, on CNN, or on any other banner ad network, or maybe they do affiliate traffic? So I think breaking up your sources and asking those folks where they're generating the leads, you have completely different numbers, right? So the holy grail of lead generation is the search, right? A consumer's on their own intuition, needing a product. They're going in, they're typing in the exact keywords that they're looking for, auto insurance in Huntington, California, or home insurance quote in California. And that intent is really high there. So naturally, if someone's doing it on their own intuition, you would expect a higher contact rate, right? So Google leads should be, 35 to 45 to maybe even 60% contact rate, depending on your source. As you go down the funnel with different generations, such as display or Facebook, you typically going to see a little bit lower contact rate because they were pulled in, or based on something they saw, they gravitated their intent over to that ad and filled out a piece of information. In affiliate traffic, some of it can just be right place at the right time or wrong place at the right time. So those are kind of the 3 pieces how I would break up contact rate. Typically your highest contact rate and highest success rate is, your SEM or sourced Google, Bing, or Yahoo leads. Your Facebook, your display is going to be a little bit lower. And then if they have an affiliate network, that's probably going to be your lowest contact rate.
So how does an agent control that?
Well, that's a great question. I think this is part of the mysterious box of lead generation, right? What goes on behind the scenes that agents don't know about, or what questions do I ask, right? So I think that it first comes down to, who do you partner with? Do you trust that organization? Are they out to make $1, or are they out to grow partnerships, right? Those are probably 2 different visions and probably have 2 different business models behind the scenes. So I think educating yourself on where you're buying those leads and where primarily they're spending their marketing dollars. There's so many websites out there like SEMrush or a couple other websites where you can go and you can see a landing page and find out where the media is coming from. Is it organic? Is it paid media from social? So asking questions on where leads are coming from a lead generator is always important from my point of view. Will they be able to change it or only give you leads from that certain source? Depends on the organization, depends on the company. It's just a business decision that they make. So I think asking the right questions of where they're coming from, asking the questions on how many times are the leads sold. I think that's a critical point these days, right? So if your lead's being sold to 15 other agents, your probability of having good contact rate and a great consumer experience are probably a little bit different with an organization that might sell a lead 2 or 3 times. Ultimately, again, lead generation aim is to serve consumers, right? Provide 3 or 4 unique quotes, and ultimately the person with the best price, the best value would potentially win that business. So I think just asking questions and understanding how they run their business is important. Even if you don't have the ability to pull a trigger and say, hey, I only want leads from this bucket or that bucket. But really being cognizant of watching quality, and quality shouldn't have major spikes or major downward trends. It should be pretty consistent if the folks know what they're doing on their end.
Here's a question for you. So with one of my internet lead providers, they're telling me, I'm noticing that a whole bunch of other agents are quoting these people.
Sure.
And they're telling me, well, it was only sold to one Allstate agent. And I'm like, I know that's not true because I'm going through, figuring out what's happening to our leads.
Sure.
And then they're telling us that, well, this company sells to this company and then they sell back. So it might be the same lead, but sold from different companies. Now,
Sure.
Is that just is that like a used car lot talk, or is that?
Yeah.
True?
So I think that can be looked at that in 2 different directions. First of all, great question, right? That's something that I heard many times and probably will hear for the foreseeable future, right? It's a really realistic thing that frankly happens. So again, you got to look at it from the perspective of a consumer, right? So a consumer, what's their end goal, right? To get insurance, but their end goal is to get insurance at probably a discounted rate. So as someone who goes and shops, as an educated person, or I'm sure you guys do the same, right? You go to multiple organizations or multiple websites to inquire where you can get the cheapest product. So is it likely that those consumers are going and shopping in multiple areas on a personal level? I would say yes. So I think it's hard to hold companies accountable for things that consumers are going to go on and do something on their own intuition. Now, that being said, there are companies that keep it very clean, in my opinion, and don't cross-sell that consumer multiple times or reserve that consumer. So again, those are questions you should ask the lead provider of where they're getting them, what website, things along those lines that they should be able to share in a pretty vague way, but enough to give you granular detail. So I would say, will it happen? Absolutely. Is it totally avoidable from your end or their end? I don't believe so. I think it's ultimately just a consumer going online, shopping, and trying to find the best rate. And unfortunately, they don't see it from your point of view, where you might be competing against another Allstate agent or another captive agent in the same quoting bucket that you might be in.
How honest do you think the internet lead business is with all these companies that you've dealt with?
Yeah, I would say everyone has different areas of grayness, I think is the proper way to put that. So I believe there are some true great characters out there. I think those are the ones who are typically growing. They have great quality. It's pretty consistent. And then there are definitely characters out there who probably have put profit often before their own agent base. And unfortunately, that's just a business decision that those folks make. So no matter who you work with, it's always important to review your numbers and make sure they are being on that consistent path. So from my point of view, anything in life, you never put all of your eggs in one basket. So, really investing in only one marketing source or only having one company who you spend all your money with probably isn't the wisest decision. Should they choose to change their business model, or should, something happen on the marketing team where they can't generate leads? So I think diversifying yourself is never a bad idea in this industry. But that being said, most of the people on the street these days are fairly honest. And I would do business with most of them and wouldn't feel bad about giving them money to most of those folks out there.
So you've worked with some of the big Craig, I'm sorry, I'm steamrolling this.
No, go for it.
You've worked with some of the biggest Allstate agents and other agents. What's the common thread between the people that are successful doing this and the people that just, hey, your leads suck?
Sure. Process and people. I think it can be pinpointed to those really 2 things. So, as a leader, your job is to empower others to do great things, right? As a business owner or as a manager or anyone that fits under that hierarchy structure. So oftentimes you'll get the case where maybe a business owner isn't fully involved in the lead marketing of their agency, and the wrong place, the wrong time, they walk in and they see a situation that isn't acceptable, or that's very explained, but just hard to explain from that point of view. So I think the people who do a really good job with internet leads or phone calls, really, they trust the person who's running it, whether that's the right-hand woman or right-hand man, and they have those dialogues, they have those conversations quite honest. Often the people who don't do well, they don't have that process nailed down, right? Either they choose to do it all themselves and they're frankly just too busy. They're still running business, or they're not delegating things there. And I think it's just important to have those people that you trust and empower really take hold of the marketing game. Because if you're not keeping a close eye on it, things go awry pretty quickly, right? And it could be a matter of $100 that you could go off the track, or a couple $1,000s, right? Especially if we're talking about phone calls, where phone calls are not a cheap product. So if you have your team members that don't having a process and miss 20 or 30 phone calls, that's a couple $100, right? And that stuff adds up quickly. So, a couple $100 could be a couple $1,000 in premium really quickly. They had just, either shrunk down the time where they buy those calls, or had a manager paying attention to their Ricochet or whatever lead system they might be using, where the lead status is still, not yet contacted or new, or one of those really clear telltale signs that someone either didn't do their job or they missed that phone call.
Awesome.
How important is it to be the first one to hit the lead? I mean, obviously it's very important, but
yeah,
data.
I think well, A, the data supports, yes, it's extremely important, but B, I think what's equally, if not more important, is after the 15th call, who's going to be the one to stick at it, right? So oftentimes I would hear stories from someone like Jason or one of his colleagues where, month 1 and 2, the quality might not have been fantastic, right? Maybe the contact rate, but all of a sudden on month 3 or 2.5, when frankly everyone gives up, all of a sudden you bind a great policy, right? And that policy could be a couple $100,000, over the course of a year. So the folks who really do well, in my opinion, yes, they do have a great initial contact rate, but equally, if not more important, is they have that follow-up process. And when every other person or every other agency or every other carrier gives up, they are the first one to that door, whether that's just because luck of the draw or because they're memorable, right? Those two things will equal a lot of money, in my opinion. So keeping that process solid. And even if they don't qualify, right, having that X date bucket or having that campaign set up for a touch every few months is critical, right? Because you could catch the person at the right place, the right time. They could have had a shift in their needs, and all of a sudden you're there to serve them when everyone else gave up. So I think, that follow-up from 30 days plus is extremely important as well.
How much money, how many leads would you say is enough to have an opinion of this? So what I see a lot of times, and I hear a lot of times, is, let's say like an older agent that has their own process. They start to do internet leads or live transfers. They'll spend $200-300 and say it doesn't work. And they don't have a CRM, and they have some guy with printing out the leads. And,
an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a hard number to nail down, because every agency is going to be a little bit different. So it comes down to risk and exposure, right? So someone who's a tenured agent who might be on a little bit different of a comp plan probably has a little bit less room for, spending a couple $1,000s, and their wiggle room might be a little bit wider. But a newer agent, someone who's on a new contract that might have a different payout plan, or whatever those economic conditions might be a little different, I would say you have to break those up into 2 different buckets. I think you have to really understand, do you have the right processes in place, right? Many folks out there should not buy web leads. It's just not for them. Or many folks out there should not buy phone calls. They don't have the processes in place to work them successfully. So I think it's an internal decision on what those risk factors might be. And setting yourself up for failure on Excel is 100% going to happen if you stick to Excel. So investing in a product that can help you simplify your life or help automate your life, it is the answer for that. And I would say, you know, after phone calls, you know, 100 phone calls is a substantial amount. 50 to 100 phone calls is a good amount, especially if they're pricey phone calls. But seeing those early metrics are equally, if not more important, right? So if we're talking about web leads and you have a 1% contact rate, it's unlikely that the 1% contact rate is going to go to 50% contact rate overnight. Yeah. So, you know, I think that's why you can't really put a firm number and say, you know, $5,000 is that magical number that if you plug and chug the right way, it's going to equal success. You know, I think you'll know pretty early on whether the quality is there based on contact rate on the web leads. And on phone calls, you kind of understand what type of consumer, were they actually interested in a quote, or were they coerced in some way that they just got caught the right place at the right time because the telemarketer was an aggressive or a smooth salesperson, right? So I think those are the two telltale signs that you can tell pretty quickly on whether a source is frankly worth your money or not, before spending $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 and saying, "Oh man, this isn't working." So I don't have that magical number. I think everyone's going to be a bit different there, but just keeping an eye on those close to telltale signs on the data lead side and the phone call side will do a lot of agents a lot of good.
But I think that says a lot, because you mentioned right around 100, right? You can't do 10 live transfers and have enough data or information to really form an opinion.
Yeah, and I think you know, when you talk about data as well, so today's results and 2.5 months from now are going to be polar different results, right? So oftentimes folks that had a limited budget, they might say, "Hey, I have $1,000 to run with you," and they'd pause their account. And the real key, Nikita, is right. If they have a great follow process and they only had $1,000 to spend, what does month 2 and 3 look like for those folks? Because $1,000 in data leads is not going to last that long, right? $10 a lead, $1,000, right? Not that many leads, or whatever that magical number might be. But having the follow-up process and going back on month 2 and 3 after they've truly worked the full life cycle of that lead, they might have a completely different story, right? Maybe the first week or two, or the first $1,000, they didn't really have a great quote rate, they had good contact rate, and something wasn't hitting. And all of a sudden, month 2 and 3, they closed 3 policies, and all of a sudden their cost per acquisition is in a great place. So going back and revisiting those things, if you have a limited budget, is definitely a good idea, because not everyone's going to close on the first call, right? Some people just have it a rule of thumb, they won't spend money unless they think about it overnight. And that's, understandable from a consumer perspective. So when you look at things like that, you need to make sure that you're letting it bake in and mature.
Gotcha. Craig, I got another question, but
keep going, man. Steamroll.
Okay.
Steamroll.
So
I'm entranced.
Yeah. Question. Internet leads. Okay, it's a 2-part question. Internet leads versus live transfers. Live transfers are more popular.
Sure.
But can they coexist in the same agency with the same agents, or do you separate those? So I guess that's 3 questions.
Yeah, so it's personality. Personality is going to drive all 3 of those questions that you just drove. So naturally, LSPs all have different personalities, right? It would be dangerous if they didn't, I think is the right way to put that. So naturally, you're going to have the go-getters, and I don't think age is a factor in this. In fact, I've proven myself wrong. Age is not a factor in this, but there are some people who are just have that grind, that grit, where they can get on the phone and they can finagle their way into a great conversation, right? Not in a slimy way, not in a bad way, but they're just naturally smooth and concise on the phone, and they build that trust factor really, really quickly. Those people are gold for data leads, right? Take those people, be nice to them, give them coffee, all of those good things, right? Because if those people are having a great day and they're smooth, you're having a great day as an agency owner. Finding those people, very difficult in my opinion, right? And making sure and monitoring they're not getting burnt out if quality goes down is extremely important. That being said, phone calls is a little bit different, right? So they need to be a smooth talker, but you also have to keep in mind that the price point on a phone call is much different, right? So if you put all of your new team members that are green as can be on a phone call, they're not going to be aggressive enough to close that consumer or to ask for that next piece of information they need. So I typically don't recommend giving phone calls to the person who's been there for a week or a day or something like that. That's just never been a powerful solution in my opinion. So I think finding the right person for that phone call where they're aggressive enough to either ask for a close or ask for a follow-up is great. And again, age is not a determining factor in this as well. I've seen people, well up there in terms of age do fantastic on both of the products, but it's really more personality. So as a business owner or as the person who's managing the marketing, right, you're managing quality, but you're also managing the emotions of how well these people are doing these products, right? They start to get burnt out on data leads. Well, now you have an easy product that's 100% contact rate, and you can switch that person's team. Or maybe you say, hey, the rest of the day, I'm going to give you a couple phone calls to work because frankly, you deserve it, right? You've been doing really well. You've been doing great dials. Your talk time's amazing. Now, can they coexist in the same office? I think so. I think that everyone knows, and you're neck of the woods, Jason, that phone calls are a hot commodity, right? Everyone wants them. They're the coolest new thing on earth, right? Because who doesn't want to pick up the phone and just have someone that's qualified right there?
Right.
But because demand is so high, supply is obviously not going to be able to meet that criteria. So having a balanced or an understanding that, frankly, there's only so many transfers out there in a day. And if you want to grow to a multi-million-dollar business, there's no way you can just rely on transfers, 150, 250 transfers a day, right? It's a great dream. You might tell a vendor, I'm willing to pay hundreds of dollars a day in phone calls, but yet they don't have the supply to meet that. So pick a realistic number, monitor it over a week, a month. You understand what their volume is, right? It's not going to have huge spikes. It might go down a little bit, but it's not going to spike up, 50 extra, 100 extra calls a day. So having the data leads to siphon in there, or age data to call when there is downtime is really critical, because frankly, if your team members are not talking all day, they're not making money and you're not making money.
Yeah, that cost adds up fast.
Yeah. And then you walk in at the wrong time and you see someone just idle and you're like, wow, it's expensive idle time, right? So it's twofold. Arming your team with enough product to work is important. And then equally, if not more important as well, is putting too much product in front of them is probably going to overwhelm, and the follow-up process is going to be the first thing that's going to go away, right?
Yep.
I'm so fascinated by how stuff works. So walk me through how a warm transfer gets to that producer, where it started.
Sure.
And I know you can't give away the secret sauce, but
well, I would say every organization does it a little bit different. And that is part of their secret sauce. And I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way to do it. So, a typical way for most folks to generate a transfer is it's all going to start with a lead of some sort, or a banner ad, or some sort of advertisement. And that advertisement's going to have a comparison, typically a comparison analogy, compare and save, bundle and save, things along those lines to captivate the intent. And typically the consumer is going to fill out a web lead form, a generic form that ranges from contact information to, what type of insurance they're looking for, and specifically what are their past history claims or things like that. And oftentimes they'll hit the submit button, and a call center will outbound dial those consumers and verify intent to receive a quote. They might ask a couple quick questions to making sure they have time for a quote. And then typically they ring the office and say, hi, I have the consumer online looking for an auto quote in California. So that's definitely one way of doing it. There are other organizations who don't put a contact center there at all. So some of them just have a phone number. Typically the phone number will prompt them to put in a zip code, or prompt them to put in some sort of unique identifier from a geo perspective that they can understand where those consumers are. And then sometimes they route them directly to the agency. So there's no right way to do it. There's no wrong way to do it. It's preference. A lot of it comes down to consumer experience. So call centers can typically be a little bit rougher on the consumer, right? Their goal is to generate transfers, right? So they're going to be pushy, oftentimes edging that consumer over to the transfer center and to the office. But I don't think there's one way that works better than the other. I think it's more of a staff and a personality thing. So if you have a really strong staff personality, you probably don't need a call center, right? If your team members are a little bit more green and probably need a little bit more hand holding, having a contact center help, warm up the consumer or, verify a couple quick questions probably is a good thing for your team.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome.
What data? I already asked that one. I have a whole bunch of questions for you, and we kind of jumped around. But
sure.
Where do you see the internet lead game going? Like, you've lived through quite a bit of a transformation in the last few years, and
yeah, I think that's a great thing. Transparency is probably the utmost important thing. If I was to pinpoint, one thing that's going to change, I think some of the actors out there are being very transparent with what they're doing, and they give you the ability to pick and target certain types of leads, certain areas and geos. I think that's going to be the trend of the industry, right? In my opinion, there are, like I said, a lot of people doing the right thing out there, and I think they'll continue to do that. And I think as you talk about lawyers and as you talk about folks out there who are, looking to get the latest TCPA compliance lawsuit, that's definitely a big risk, right? So having a partner that you trust or having a partner that can trace back where their leads are coming from is very important. I think that, having advertising that your partners are using is really important as well, right? They're promising free insurance and you get on the phone with a consumer who says, whoa, your insurance is not free. You're obviously going to have a jaded experience, and same thing with experience of the consumer, right? It all comes back to the consumer too. So as a business owner, you're trying to get consumers, but you have to put yourself on their personal level to understand the marketing material that they've seen and the promises or hopes that they've been shown, and having to meet those things in the middle are often a little bit tricky. So I think, as organizations like Facebook cut down on the types of ads that people are served, or all the underlying factors on, the big data stuff that's very present in the world today, I think things will become a little bit more transparent. I think there'll be some maybe regulation in terms of what ad copy can say, what ad copy can promise. So I think it's just going to be a little bit cleaner. But that being said, there are folks out there that won't affect them because they're just doing a great job and they have great people behind the scenes who keep it clean and keep it concise.
Obviously, that there's people that generate their own leads, right? So those people that are generating their own leads by writing their own copy and creating their own funnel,
sure,
right, are competing with you guys now as the aggregators, and I don't know if that's the right term, but as the big data companies continue to buy more ad space, what is that going to do to the people that are trying to do it themselves? Eventually, they're going to be priced out.
Yeah, I mean, it depends where you advertise, right? So I think Facebook's a great example of that, where you have large organizations investing very heavy in Facebook. And Facebook's obviously very sensitive to the time of year that you advertise, right? The last 2 months of the year in those holidays drive up prices on display advertising quite a bit. So I don't think the little guys will go away. I think that will it get harder? Sure. Will they put more regulation in terms of what you can put on the ad copy that maybe the bigger guys can adjust to because they have a full team dedicated to that? Probably. But that being said, I don't feel that the little guys will totally go away. There's always going to be some sort of keyword you can target that maybe you're smarter than the big guys are, or some sort of niche that you can leverage as a local individual that they run national ads and won't have that niche. So putting fun facts in there or something that's going to captivate the local audience is probably where folks that are smaller are going to capture that intent quicker or better than someone who's running a generic blanket ad that's going to serve all 50 states.
That's interesting. You need to, well, you guys need volume. And so you're going to target the big keywords, which obviously drive up the price of those words. And a friend of mine loves to say the riches are in the niches. And, if we can find that little secret thing that may work, whether it's landlords or some derivative of
Sure.
landlords policies for us to get the foot in the door, that may be the way to look to augment our internet purchase as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's niches everywhere. You just got to find them right. The big companies have massive teams doing it, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be better or more prone to click that big ad versus your small ad. So I think it's just how you present yourself and what spin you can put on it in a clean way. That's probably going to make a difference and make the little guys still be able to get in there.
I like that quote. The riches are in the niches.
Comes from somebody we're going to get on. His name's Todd Hartley.
I feel like there's
the riches are in the niches.
I feel like there's another word that could rhyme and that you could gangsterize that saying.
The riches are in the niches, bitches.
Could be.
Oh, now we have to check.
Good job.
Great. I just blew it.
It was so clean. It was so clean.
It's just a biatches.
There you go.
Now it's okay. I think.
Justin,
he won't
dude,
cut that out either.
Awesome info. It's cool too because here's the other thing that I think I'm gathering. It's kind of complicated in a sense, not complicated, but there's a lot to it. So it's time consuming, right? To be involved in this world.
Time is everyone's worst enemy, right? You don't have enough of it, and if you had more, you could run the world, right? So sometimes it's worth it to outsource things where, frankly, people are only doing one thing a day, and they're really good at it. So it's that balance as a business owner where, yes, you could probably save a couple bucks here and there, but you don't have time to do stuff that you need to do from an agency perspective, right? There's just only so many hours in the day. And you can stay up late night and work on your campaign structure, or you can stay up late night and game plan all these big things. And one thing's going to come and just completely kibosh your plan. So, valuing your time and valuing others' time and just picking the right partner who you trust, I think is extremely important. And yeah, it's complicated, right? If it was easy, everyone would do it. There's so many niches in there that little folks or folks out there are really good at, and you'll probably never hear of because they don't spend the marketing dollars to go be heard, but they're out there. You just got to go find them. And the big guys, right? They do a lot of marketing, right? Everyone knows the big couple companies out there who generate a lot of leads, and there's nothing wrong with partnering with those folks. Just having a good relationship, understanding what is success from them, and they should understand what success is for you. So it's a two-way street. And I think we talked about it earlier, but that preconceived notion is huge, right? Just because someone had bad leads 6 months ago doesn't mean today they'll have bad leads, right? Those folks change, right? As their business shrinks or as their business grows, they need to either generate more leads or they maybe need to work on other things. So, not counting anyone out in such a small but big world is really critical. So, my perspective is don't write anyone off forever, right? Give them a cool off period, let them do their thing, understanding what they're going to do different, and then give it another shot.
And I think that's the most unique thing about that business, opposed to almost any other business, is like one company, and we had this, one of the biggest companies was freaking awesome for us. Almost every live transfer we were crushing it. And then all of a sudden, they were the worst. So then all those dollars that we were like, okay, we're going to invest more in this. It just, all of a sudden, our costs were skyrocketing at overnight. Yeah. And so, then they sucked, and I invested a ton in them, and then they sucked. And that was an eye-opening thing for me. But it's an ever-changing thing.
And some of that's part of their doings. And frankly, there are some times where it's the consumer who just naturally changes. So I think many factors are at play there. And that's why it's important to keep a close eye on stuff and have a good relationship with someone who can solve your problem versus, yell at them or tell them they're the worst human in the world, right? There's all those folks in different ways to address it. But keeping a close eye on them and just saying, hey, things have changed. Is there anything changed on your end? And keeping a close eye on it is frankly never a bad thing.
Is it better to invest a big amount with a company or a small amount so that you always have the leverage?
I thought big amounts of money were totally useless. Most companies are their cash flow, the way it works and their business model, like there were many people I used to work with who say, I have X amount of money and you're going to treat me differently. And frankly, I didn't care if they put $1 down or $10,000 or $100,000. Didn't drive my decision different either way. And they're not going to go in the back and be like, okay, this lead goes to that guy because he put down 10,000 and that one goes to that guy because he put down 50. So, some people get the matches with big stuff, but I don't think it's a deal breaker in my opinion. And there's really no upside to putting hundreds of $1,000s in one marketing source because frankly, things do change. So I was never a big fan of, thousands of dollars down and locked in, because then if something was to go wrong that I couldn't fix, I had no solution. So it's kind of a lose-lose in my opinion.
Makes sense. I don't want to take up all your time, Justin, with all these questions. You, Craig, do you have anything?
Well, there's just so many forces at work. It's hard to determine what creates the leads being good or the leads being bad.
Yep.
It's fascinating.
I think it can be kind of summed up by personality. I think that's the number one thing that sways the most, right? As a producer, as someone who's running business, if your mood's off and you're not on your game, you're not going to get that business. So lead quality, sure, it does fluctuate, I'm sure, but the biggest thing that fluctuates is personality and how your LSPs or how your producers are approaching that. So staying on them and using my favorite slogan of, gentle pressure, relentlessly applied. I think that's the biggest thing you can do as a business owner is just minimize the dips, right? So if your team can be really consistent and maybe not kill it every day, but just are being more consistent, then your quality is not going to fluctuate as much. You'd be surprised on, someone's having a bad day and all of a sudden your leads are bad, or they're having a good day and it's like, wow, these leads are the best leads I've ever had. The reality is that there's zero things that have changed besides the personality of the person who's working that lead.
Yep. And it seems like this is that in all parts of your agency, if it's not being monitored and you're not spending time constantly working on it, it's going to dip. There's no set it and forget it. And I think that's what most insurance agents want. Set it and forget it.
That's a unicorn that doesn't exist. And when it does, you should be scared, right? So something's too good to be true. That's just never going to be that way. But yeah, I mean, it's not a set it and forget it mindset. That's just not how the business works. And those who probably go on the set and forget probably coast a little bit too long. And, when stuff hits the fan, it hits the fan hard when you've been coasting. So that's my opinion on that one.
I like that. The PG version, when the stuff hits the fan.
Yeah.
Way to go. See, Craig? That's how you do
I'll learn someday.
Justin, dude, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Absolutely.
I think it'll help people.
Absolutely. Let me send me the link when you guys are done. Love to see it.
Okay, you got it for sure.
And then go ahead and just forward us the ad copy and the landing page.
Good, no problem.
No, I'm just kidding.
And then we'll set it and forget it.
Yeah, set it and forget it
because it's simple.
Yeah, it'll be perfect. It'll be a perfect plan. Perfect Friday plan, right?
Put our ads, set our ad spend, and they'll just come rolling in.
Just no budget. I set it to no budget, and you'll be great. Only good things will happen, right?
Be able to not even have producers, just computer close it.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Well, appreciate the time as well, and looking forward to the finished product.
That is our good dude, Justin Ryan.
See you guys later.
See you, buddy.
See ya. Thank you.
Your Insurance Dudes podcast is sponsored by Agency Vault, an industry leader in agency coaching, hiring and retaining top talent, and sales training with the 7-step trusted advisor sales framework. Are you up for the challenge? For $99, you'll get 28 days of access and an opportunity to join our private platinum coaching group. For more information, navigate to www.agencyvault.com.
Hey, thanks for checking out the Insurance Dudes. Hey, please subscribe. We got some really great stuff coming out.